Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am Chris Taylor and I am the Advocate of the Devil, a name I took with absolutely no reference to a movie from the 90s or a segment from one of my favorite web shows ever. Not at all. Speaking of reusing ideas, the entertainment industry seems to be in a huge period of a specific set of 3 R's: reboot, remaster, and re-release. Everything that seems to have something resembling an impact critically and or commercially seems to be things that have already existed in some form or another, with a new coat of paint. There are no new ideas anymore. Creativity is at an all-time low. Original thoughts be damned. We need to make a quick buck. Whether it be in gaming or movies, the prevalent theory is that for it to sell, it must have already been a good seller. Risk-taking takes a back seat to a sure thing, with an existing intellectual property having an easier time seeing the light of day than, say, something made solely out of a love of the story that the artist in question wishes to tell. Sadly, that also means that originality is shunned. Nothing new or exciting can be seen on the horizon. All signs are pointing to a future filled with these kinds of releases, and the idea of something brand new seems far-fetched. Nigh impossible. But here's the thing. Reboots have just as much of a right to exist as anything original. First, let's talk about one of my favorite reboots in recent memory.
I come from the net, through systems, peoples, and cities, to this place, Mainframe.
Okay, I asked for that one. Let's take a look at my second favorite reboot in recent memory, the 2013 release of Tomb Raider. This series started out in 1996, 20 years ago.
Right, now I'd better take off these wet clothes.
In the original, you take Lara Croft, a sort of female Indiana Jones type, and explore closed-off areas filled with lions and tigers and bears. Oh my! You find secret passageways, listening to a haunting soundtrack, and, well, struggle through a combat system that left a lot to be desired. As time went on, the series evolved hand in hand with the consoles used to play these games. Suddenly, Lara didn't look like a Lego character anymore. The lines got smoother, the stories got larger, more grandiose, and the combat stayed identical throughout. Stand still and shoot, occasionally jumping or dodge rolling out of the way. That's the major point I'm trying to make on this one. Sooner or later, sticking to a tried and true formula is not always the solution. Sometimes, you've got to shake things up. And while Tomb Raider Anniversary did a phenomenal job of bringing Lara and her adventures to a more modern era of gaming, it was still the same game we'd already played, with a few added bells and whistles, and a slight restructuring of the storyline to fit into a trilogy. Legend, Anniversary, and Underworld respectively. Insert the reboot, a top-to-bottom overhaul of what made these games great.
I finally set out to make my mark, to find adventure. But instead, adventure found me.
The basic principle is the same, Lara exploring a brand new territory, but her motivations are changed. Now it's not only curiosity that drives her, but survival as well. Throughout the game, you get more advanced form of weaponry and use glorified junk that you find along the way to power yourself up. The combat, which in the originals was stilted and unwieldy, was suddenly fluid, fast-paced, and exciting. We had a new origin story for a beloved character, as well as new characters to help flesh out this brand new take. And while some may be of the opinion to say it was too vulgar or violent, I'm of a mind to say that this interpretation is amongst one of my favorite video game characters of all time. Reboots aren't just about changing things up though. Sometimes they're about correcting mistakes from a previous entry, which brings me to my next example, Mark Webb's Amazing Spider-Man. I know what you're thinking. The mistake was in rebooting the franchise in the first place. Sam Raimi did a spectacular job bringing the web head to the big screen. And you know what? I'm actually inclined to agree. However, there are some things that needed to be addressed, things that the fans had been clamoring for in the first place. The first being those web shooters.
Go web! Fly!
In Sam Raimi's version of the character, the bite that gave Peter Parker his wall-crawling and spider sensibilities also gave him the ability to shoot webs out of his hands. While I can 100% see the logic in streamlining some of the specifics of a comic to tell the story that you want to tell, Pete's brains was one of the major contributing factors to him being such a fascinating character in the first place. He was a nerd that we all wanted to be like. Well, in the crime-fighting, snarky, little smartass kind of way.
Just let me go.
Is that a knife? Is that a real knife?
Yes, it's a real knife.
My weakness, it's small knives.
Just let me go.
Anything but knives!
Oh, it's so simple.
That's my next point. In the reboots, Andrew Garfield's portrayal actually showed more personality. We had a hero who actively taunted his adversaries while going toe-to-toe with them. While Tobey Maguire's Spidey did have a few one-liners here and there in the first of Raimi's trilogy, that side of Pete's parlayant personality seemed to disappear in the later two films. And finally, there's the inclusion of Gwen Stacy.
Okay, Gwen, I've got a secret. It's my copier.
In Raimi's films, she shows up in the last one to seemingly shoehorn a love triangle between Pete and Mary Jane, a character that by my viewing seemed to be a mishmash of both MJ and Gwen from the get-go. In the Amazing movies, she was her own character, and probably thanks to their actual relationship, seemed to be much more natural. The chemistry between Garfield and Emma Stone practically oozed off the screen. While both sets of films are Spider-Man movies, they both focused on entirely different aspects of the comics, using different themes and enemies, even side characters. But that could just be differing interpretations of the same characters. Any form of art is subjective, and Spider-Man in the comics, being read by two different people, are going to have different reactions from those two people. One reboot that seemed to have the same reaction from almost everyone I've spoken to is this one.
Shit. Back in limbo. Bad day for a hangover.
Devil May Cry is a series filled to the brim with cheesy lines, amazing combat, and over-the-top enemies. And while the first four had their own sets of problems, DMC gets a lot of hate merely for having the gall to exist. Instead of being a white-haired, red-coated, smarmy little badass, we got this apathetic, vulgar, pissant little... Man, I can't even pretend to mock this guy. I'm gonna try and keep this part short, especially since smarter men than me have already defended this particular reboot. But I do feel like this is one of the better, if not best, reboots in recent circulation. The combat, which has always been a major part of DMC's success, was incredible. Instead of only being able to choose one or two of your arsenal at any given time, you were able to change weapons on the fly, mid-combo. The enemies are some of the most varied in the series' history. The music gets you pumped and fits into this new setting, and the new portrayals of Dante and Virgil's relationship together was genius. And besides that, this Dante actually grows as a character. He changes and evolves and learns and adapts. In the original games, he was a ham, and that was awesome. But he was always the same character from beginning, middle, and end. The reboot doesn't suddenly take that away or make the previous version non-existent. It merely interprets the base principles of the character differently. Besides, I think we can all agree that Devil May Cry 2 was a far worse game than DMC Devil May Cry could ever have been. Lastly, since we're talking so much about interpretations today, that mop scene...
Not in a million years.
That was not openly mocking the fans of the original Dante. It was foreshadowing, considering by the end of the reboot, Dante's hair is back to being white again. Despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, I do hope I managed to shed some light into the positive aspects of reboots. Whether it's an evolution of a beloved character from gaming's humble 3D beginnings, to an alternate way of looking at a comic book character older than most people watching this video. Reboots have the potential of injecting some much needed freshness to an otherwise stale franchise. And while change can be hard to swallow for some people, it can also be exactly what a series needs to set itself apart from its predecessors. Besides, if the new version doesn't suit your needs, the old one will always be there to greet you with open arms. As always, feel free to let us know in the comments section below what you think of reboots. Did I miss your favorite one? Maybe you think reboots are completely unnecessary. By all means, bring that up too, so that I may proceed to prove you wrong.
Boom! Lawyered.
But for now, in the case of reboots, the defense rests.
This is my chance to prove myself.
Third time's the charm?